Hello and welcome to Celebrating UPR, and I'm so happy to introduce to you today Clive Loseby. A very warm welcome to you, Clive.
Hi Maria, it's lovely to be here.
Clive, it's wonderful to meet you and that we're going to find out more about you. So I'd like to know what were your beginnings and how did you come to be doing what you're doing now? What was the process for you?
Okay, so my girlfriend Jess and I we got actually got engaged after 6 weeks, which was much the consternation of parents, but we kind of knew that it was we had the real thing. So we got engaged and we were going to get married in 1989. Unfortunately, we were in a very nasty car crash. We were both passengers. We came out of a nightclub, and our friend who was driving felt he'd had too much to drink, so we all slept over in the car, and he woke up a couple of hours later and set off without waking us. So the three of us, as well as him, we were all lying prone. I was across the back seat. Jess was in the boot because it was a state car, and our friend Jane was in the front seat. Unfortunately, the driver lost control, Mark, and he hit a lamppost at 50 miles an hour, which wasn't good. The recoil from the impact threw Jess out of the back. She hit the road, she broke her back, and she's been paralysed from the waist down ever since. I was thrown against the car seat, smashed up my lungs and my head, had quite a severe concussion, and our friend Jane smashed up her face quite badly in her leg. So it was just a horrible thing, and it was just one of those things. But when it happens when you're 19, it's a bit of a, I wouldn't say game changer. You're just on a different set of tracks altogether because nothing can really prepare you for that. So I should have said Jess was the singer in my band at the time. You know, there's me with dreams of being a budding rock star. And although I had the hair, absolutely, I had the hair for it, but I didn't really have the brilliant technical ability you needed to have in the 1980s if you're into playing heavy rock guitar. So the wedding kind of got put back a year. Jess ended up in rehab in the spinal unit over at Salisbury District Hospital, and we got married in 1990. When you're in a wheelchair, you have a different perspective on everything, and this was before the Disability Discrimination Act. So lovely historic Chichester, where we were, we're still lovely and historic, but with lots of lovely historic inaccessible buildings. And the problem with that is that you can't get into them. So Jess, being Jess, thought, well, we've got to do something about this, and she put together a campaign group. Because there was no legal force behind it. She just was in the paper almost every week, just campaigning. And because of her work and the group that she set up, they put in 2,000 drop curbs around Chichester. It was amazing. Yep. And the Butter Market, 500 years old, they put a lift in there, which they got just to open. The buildings, one by one, the banks, a lot of them, they all got made accessible in the end, which was fantastic. So just fast forward a bit to 2007, and we suddenly accessibility is expected. Obviously, you've had the DDA around since 1996 or whenever it was. So you just expect buildings to be accessible. Now, by this point, Jess had spent a lot of years being a very successful international digital award-winning artist, and I'd had several years being a reasonably successful composer for TV and film. But with both of these nature of these works, you will go long periods without earning any money. And we both did a bit of lecturing. We wrote degree courses in what we did, and we still weren't really making enough money. And so we decided one day to start a web design company. Jess, up to this point, was doing loads of stuff on the web. She was a net artist, which is the kind of subversive movement that did a lot of this in the late 90s, did a lot of art on the internet. The really cool thing about that is that Jess was being judged for the quality of her work, because on the internet you're anonymous. So nobody's got any idea whether you're disabled or able-bodied or anything else. And so she was picking up commissions, international ones, purely based on her work. And we've been out to America, been out to Italy. Never told people that Jess was in a wheelchair. Would just turn up, a look of total shock on their face. And it's amazing how people have all these preconceptions about disability. Actually, Jess's art wasn't just about disability. It's about being a woman, being a mother, being everything else. Anyway, the music, I mean, it was a lot of fun. But we got to the point where we weren't really making some money. So we thought, let's get into web design. Let's start this web design company. Then we discovered that although Chichester, historic, lovely Chichester, was accessible, you had the Disability Discrimination Act, so it's now a given. You go somewhere, you expect it to have access for a wheelchair. That's kind of standard. As far as the internet's concerned, it's like being back in the 1980s. And most websites that we saw were just horrendously inaccessible. And Jess said to me, look, we're going to have to do things a bit differently. You can't have a world that is accessible and a virtual world that isn't accessible.
Can you describe a little bit what an inaccessible website means?
Okay,
What
so right, if let's say that you're blind, so you're not going to be able to use a mouse because you can't see the screen. So if you take the mouse away, you've just got a keyboard. Now, blind people use a keyboard to navigate through a website. And there are certain rules in place that make it easy for people to navigate with a keyboard. And unfortunately, most websites do not have that rules applied. People who are blind will use a screen reader, which reads out what's on the website. Some people who don't have motor skills, so they can't use a mouse because they find it difficult, again, will use a keyboard. Back then, I mean, people who use tablets and people who use iPhones and everything, mobile devices, they're all people that fall under the same category of accessibility, because accessibility purely means doing it differently and having a different need. So and just discovered, there are rules and regs for websites. And they said back in 1999, look, if you're going to make a website, here's a list of standards to follow. And if you follow these standards, your website will work for as many people as possible. Remember, in 1999, the idea of having a mobile website or an iPad, a tablet website, or just didn't exist. But they knew one day more and more people are going to use the internet. And obviously one of the biggest users of that would be people with disabilities. So all these rules were laid down. And Jess, being Jess, said, right, okay, we're going to adopt all of these, every single one of them. So ever since our first website, Jess has said, right, every website we do has got to pass these checks. Now, there's not just checks for accessibility, there's checks for coding standards as well. And there's two sets of guidelines. I won't get into too much in the technicalities of it, but one is the WCAG, which is the World Wide Web Content Accessibility Guidelines, and one is W3C, which are the coding standards. These sets of standards you can actually test your website against. Unfortunately, they do conflict in places, which doesn't help. And I remember Jess said to me one day, look, we've got these two sets of standards. You've got these strict coding standards. You've got these accessibility standards. Where there is a clash, which is more important to you? And I said, well, as a coder, you would say the coding is always important, but as a user, it's got to be user experience first. So that's what we did. So we always put the needs of the user above everything else. And for years, literally years, I used to bang the drum about accessibility, saying, look, these people have got a lot of money to spend. It makes sense that your website works for them. And people would get it, and they think, oh yeah, that's nice. And some people would really get it. But about 5 years ago, Google suddenly started getting it, because Google is blind, and our website suddenly started to perform really well. If you think through it logically, it makes sense, because Google, I don't know how much Google cares about accessibility, but it certainly cares about Google. And what was happening, it was having websites that didn't work for as many, for people with accessibility needs, and they were coming up in searches above ones that were accessible. Now, if you're a disabled person and Google is giving you lots of sites that you can't use, you're going to think, well, why is Google giving me these websites I can't use? Let's find another search engine, and maybe that will help. And the thing is, you know what it's like on the internet. You find something you like, you stick with it. but also if you find something you don't like, you're gone. And so Google started ranking websites. There's loads of things it ranks websites for, as well as accessibility and coding, hosting, and lots of other stuff. But accessibility, and it's a no-brainer, because now I just say to people, look, Google is blind. If your website works well for Google, if your website works for blind people, it will work well for Google, and then people get it. So that's kind of makes my life much easier, because I can then just boil down it into that one sentence, and then I don't need to go into this long explanations.
And so blind people and screen readers, I've actually heard about that. What other accessibility needs does the end user have?
Well, they might, if you've got dyslexia, or you might prefer to have a high contrast, because you find it difficult to see close colors. So all of our websites come with a dyslexia friendly version. You hit the dyslexia button and suddenly you've got this quite strong cream blue thing, and it doesn't perhaps look aesthetically brilliant, but it's a very high contrast, so it's easy for people to dyslexia to understand. We
Really
do.
relate to that, because all of the TV sites like Netflix, Amazon Prime have got the worst, the reverse type, so the black background with the white. So for somebody with really bad eyesight, I just can't read it.
No.
So
Well,
would your dyslexia thing work in that kind of?
but it just makes things in a higher contrast, and again,
That,
all
that's
this
what
isn't
we with bad eyesight need, a good contrast. So
the
I do
thing.
relate to that. Are there any other sorts of accessibility?
Well, like I say, we do a large print version because people like things, have things in a large print. There are things called accessibility keys that you can program to your browser, and there's supposed to be standards about that. But the problem is, not everyone's got the same ones, so we avoid those. We just say, look, these are the options that you can do. The other thing with our website is we do the plain text version, and if you come to one of our websites and you're sighted, you'll see the nice graphics and whatever. But if you're blind, what you see is really clean code, and you'll see a menu that says, jump to the sitemap, jump to the main content, because again, it makes it easier for people to navigate. But there's loads of things. There's the tab test is a great way of finding out quickly how accessible your website is. If you press the tab key, what you should find is that as you go across the content, you should go across and down, and you should be able to tab to every single page on the website. 99% of websites fail that test, and yet it's just a bit of code that would fix it. So for me, yes, we're a web design company. We do bespoke websites, we do off-the-shelf websites, but the passion is making the websites that work for as many people as possible.
That's incredible, because I just want to highlight something that you said at the beginning, that how many users exactly will have specific accessibility needs? Because what you said is that many disabled people will be using websites rather than perhaps going to the service physically. So in that sense, every website has to be accessible, doesn't it?
Well, if you think about it, we're talking. I mean, there's 8 million people in this country with dyslexia. Couple of million. You see, the thing is, people think that wheelchair users are obviously disabled, but actually it's not just wheelchair users. There are people who use walking sticks, use walking frames, and it's the same with blind people. Very few blind people are completely blind. Most of them have got some degree of sight. So what they might do is they use a screen magnifier. That means that they can just zoom in on a part of the screen. The problem with, well, not the problem with that, but one of the things about websites is that you may have seen cookie banners, the ones that appear at the top. The problem with a cookie banner, people think they need them because they comply with the law, the cookie law. But in actually, what they do is they break the accessibility. They break the Equality Act, because they make a website inaccessible. Because I've had people who are blind who go to these websites, they don't even see the banner, because it's not part of the navigation, and there's no way that they can pick it up. Or if they're zoomed in on one area, it's out of their sight. So you've just got this bizarre thing where people think they have to have things like cookie banners when they don't. You
Yeah.
just need to make sure your terms and conditions have got stuff about cookies in them.
Yes, I've actually got a lovely blind friend, and I've seen her on her devices, like,
Cool.
and I've heard the voiceover thing, and sometimes when it just jumps into a load of code, it just sounds like a robot that's had too much to drink. You know, it's of no use to the blind user.
the,
Needs
the,
to be nice and clean across and down, because that's that's the convention that they know. That's how you navigate a website.
the thing is, if you don't, then people will think that your website is about a quarter of the size of what it actually is. You know, why would you not want to make it as easy as possible for anybody to do business with you? Because that's what it comes down to, you know, and that's why for years I talked about the economic argument, spending power of disabled people was 80 billion a year and things like that, which are true. So therefore, doesn't it make sense? I mean, right now we are in a massive, massive nightmarish scenario with COVID and everything else, and as we get through this, you know, people will start spending money again, and they're going to be making choices about who to spend that money with. Um, it makes sense that the website works for as many people as possible to increase the chance of people spending money with you.
Also, it just opens up a bigger conversation about accessibility and equality in the world,
It does.
and attitudes to that. And I really appreciate how your personal, sadly tragic experience has caused you both to work with great empathy and due respect in that way.
It's the thing is, when it happened, um, I mean, it's you can't. When I tell people the story, and you can immediately see them thinking, "Oh, how would I have responded to that, and how would I deal with it?" You just do. Um, it was weird. It was awful for Jess being in the spinal unit for that long, but she had to do the rehab. She had to learn how to be, you know, a wheelchair user. She had seriously powerful arms because of all the workouts that she did, um, and you just it didn't stop us doing anything. It didn't stop us getting married. Didn't stop us having kids. Didn't stop us her being an artist, me being a musician. All of that stuff was going on because that's just for us. That was just the way we were always had been. And it did mean sometimes we get into a few scrapes. I can remember one time she was out with our gorgeous assistance dog Ash, and she was out on some particularly muddy fields, and she had this kind of 4x4 wheelchair with this big pink racing seat in it, and being Jess, she'd just kind of go anywhere, and she got stuck in a field, and she didn't come back. We had no idea where she was, walking around the village. Eventually I discovered her. I heard the sound of a whistle. It was a bit of a Titanic moment. I was like, where's this whistle coming from? And then I saw it in the far corner of a muddy field, literally hanging over a ditch, because she'd gone through what she thought that was a little puddle was actually a 2-foot drop. That had got down, and all she could do was hang on and just keep blowing the whistle. It was, yeah, it was horrendous. But that was just for you. She'd get into all sorts of scrapes like that.
Oh
Um,
goodness.
um, yeah, Ash was absolutely useless. She just scarpered off to the next field, I think. But and that stuff like that just kind of happens. But I'd rather, you know, at the end of the day, you've only got one life. You've just got to do stuff, and that's what we've always done. Is you've just got to throw yourself into whatever you're doing, and if something doesn't work out, okay, well, you do it differently.
I just think this is a really very moving story, because it will give hope to people whose life has suddenly very awfully been redirected. And actually, in terms of the current context with the virus, with the economy, and sadly, so many freelancers and so many service hand-to-hand professionals now that not being available, I think that it's always so uplifting to hear a story of somebody that you know, or someone that you know, who the worst possible scenario happens, and the human spirit and the creative spirit prevails, and you just get on with it. And that's what people always say. Like, I keep hearing that, you just get on with it, don't you?
Yeah.
But to hear that is really, really inspiring, because obviously necessity is the mother of invention, and you've both been so creative, and you've just shown such resilience and such drive to, like, no, this isn't gonna stop me being creative and making my life work. That's exemplary. That's very, very moving for me and to people watching.
4 years, because obviously with everything going on with COVID, it's horrendous. It's people who've got compromised respiratory systems are particularly vulnerable, and I fall into that category because I've also got this thing called bronchiectasis, which is basically means that I can't clear my lungs properly. And for years, I was getting repeated chest infections, and I picked up a thing called Pseudomonas, which is a super bug, and it's very hard to get rid of. And that was about 2015, 2016. They suggested, come into hospital. We can't get rid of this stuff. If you come in for 2 weeks, we will get you on intravenous antibiotics and we'll get rid of it. And I said, well, I can't do that. I can't take it out that sort of time. I'm trying to keep the business going, trying to keep everything going. Jess's health was kind of not great. It was just the idea of taking out 2 weeks was not possible. So Easter 2016, which is just over 4 years ago, I couldn't breathe. One day I had pain in my back. I had no idea what it was. It was so bad that all I could basically do was just yell very loudly at the top of my voice, but I couldn't explain to anybody what was going on. My son called an ambulance. I got taken into hospital. I had pneumonia, and I was in hospital for 2.5 weeks. And during that time, they put me on intravenous antibiotics, and they got rid of the Pseudomonas. Basically, it got completely out of control, and I wasn't in a good shape at all. That was my second kind of close scrape. The first time with the accident, I think I'd stopped breathing, and they had actually filled in my death certificate. That's right. They were just waiting for me to kind of pop off so they could sign it off. So second time around, pneumonia, it wasn't good either. But the hospital, St. Richard's Hospital, big shout out to them. They were amazing. They got the Pseudomonas sorted out, and they do this pulmonary rehab course, which is like a load of lectures where you understand about your condition, and a load of circuit training, because my fitness wasn't very good. And I did the course, and they felt I hadn't got the message, so they made me do the whole course again. Yeah, and by the end of it, one of the things I was surrounded by, a lot of people who were very poorly, and I was finding it quite challenging. Anyway, by the end of the second time around, my fitness had doubled, and they introduced me to this amazing thing. It's just called an acapella. It's an acapella active, and what you do, it's like a child's breathing apparatus. See inside there? Can you hear that rattling? Yeah, good. That is something that, as you breathe into it, that vibrates, and it sends sonic waves down into your lungs. Yeah, because I can't clear my lungs properly. That's why all the muck stays and gets infected. With this, you breathe and you breathe and you breathe, take a rest, you breathe and breathe and breathe, and then you hock it all up. And one of these lovely sample pots. You do that 3 times a day. Now, in the 4 years since I've been at hospital, I have not had a single reoccurrence. I've not been back, as in I'm not needed to go back to hospital. One time I'd got a bit slack, and I'd kind of not been doing it so often, and I got another chest infection. And one time the Pseudomonas came back, but I got rid of it with that. Just upped it. I'm on a bit of a mission about this, because this, if you got one of these, it is the best thing you could ever have in terms of keeping your chest clear. Now, I'm not saying this will defend you against COVID, but because COVID attacks people who've got compromised bronchial systems, this allows your lungs to be in the best condition they can be. It is really an amazing bit of kit. So from my point of view, I just tell people about it, because nobody seems to know about it. A lot of doctors don't know about it. A lot of nurses don't know about it. The only people who do know are physiotherapists and obviously bronchial specialists. So Acapella Active, it's called. If you've got COPD, bronchiectasis, or cystic fibrosis, something along those lines, do speak to your doctor, get a referral, get checked out. You'll be assessed. If it's right for you, what they will then do is you can get on prescription 3 times a day. That's my lifesaver.
Be amazing. And if you can't get it on prescription, how much are they?
So only about 35 quid.
I mean, not bad
But
for saving your life.
the thing is, though,
Yes.
it's really important that you're assessed because
Okay.
it doesn't work for everybody, and you
Okay.
need to be shown how to use it.
Yes. Okay.
Otherwise, I'd be putting adverts out saying, "Oh, this amazing thing will save you." No, it's not.
Okay.
But
Ask your doctor about. Yeah.
it's really important that you get assessed because because it doesn't. There's no drugs involved. You wash it up every night, let it dry naturally overnight, and you use it 3 times a day.
Fantastic.
So despite the fact that I've got the bronchiectasis, I'm still here. The hospital, because they got me into the idea of doing fitness and training on a workout most days, although since COVID, I've put on quite a lot of weight, which I'll have to get rid of at some point.
Oh, that's incredible. So that's just blown my mind. That's awesome. I really can't wait to put the links to that on your video as well. And talking of links and so on, how can people contact you? And what's your process? Like, say I'm interested in creating a website that's accessible, which now obviously makes sense. What options do? You do bespoke,
Okay.
you do an official.
So if I point this way, okay, so I meant to point that way. Right, okay. So this is what we've always done. This is our bespoke websites. 14 years we've been doing that. They cost, they're very reasonably priced, but they're still expensive. And they take up to 4 months to do because it's a full design from bottom up, and it's it's a long process. And that's great, and that's what we've always been passionate about. But 4 years ago, we developed this, and what this is one of our bespoke ones turned into a low-cost product. The idea originally it was aimed at the checker trade market, the kind of plumber or whatever who didn't have a website. But this was because a lot of people just didn't have the money to spend on websites. We had all sorts of people coming along, and accountants, solicitors, small firms, as well as sole traders. And this is our biggest selling product. It's about 70% of our income. And what we've done over the last 4 years is develop it. It now comes with an e-commerce option, and it starts at a single page. So you've got different options through it. So it kind of meets different budgets, and people can upgrade it as they go through it. So for me, this is where Jess and I started, because when we started the business in 14 years ago, so we're 2005, 6, we were doing 500 quid websites for people locally. That was our kind of core market. Then we grew bigger and more expensive, and we kind of lost a bit of that market. With running around website, we're able to get that back. And we just love it because it means that people can just have something. It can be built in 30 days. And it just kind of works. The other thing that we've developed a special version of it is for councils, parish councils, and town councils. They've been told by government last year they need to have their websites all to meet accessibility standards, and we're just about to do one for Knowsley Town Council. Up in Merseyside, they found us on Google because they couldn't find people who could do an accessible website. So from our point of view, that's great because we've always done it this way. Yes, it does mean we have to do extra work, but that's just part of our standard thing. And with Run Your Own, because it's a bespoke website that's gone through the 78 checks that we do to make sure it works across the board. In fact, we even go back to as far as Internet Explorer 7. Reason for that is there's 50,000 computers in the health service that have still got it, even though it's 12 years old. So, we do all of that stuff, but because with Run Your Own website, it's done all the checks because it's already one of our websites that was already done all of that, it means that it can be built quickly, and that build quality is there and the accessibility is there.
Wow. So let me just geek you out for a few moments longer. So say, for example, I have my website on Wix.
Okay.
No, sorry, on Weebly. Yeah. Or Wix. So these quick, fancy website shops that you can create your own in. What's the accessibility like on those sorts of websites? And
Hey,
I love the face
right.
that you're displaying right now.
Can I just first say
Yeah.
that Wix and Weebly and stuff, they're great because they allow people to build something themselves. It doesn't cost them very much money, and when they're in a position where they know what they want, they they've got that knowledge and expertise. It's much better to do that than to spend £5 on a website and then your business model changes and you're stuck. So no criticism about the fact that, and in fact, I've met people who say first website, yeah, try something like that. Why not? It's not going to cost you much money. Big learning curve. The downside of Weebly and Wix, they're all hosted in America. Google likes you to be hosted in the country in which you do your business. So
I did not know that. That's really interesting because I remember hearing with SEO, if I'm trading in the UK, to have a .co.uk URL as
yes,
opposed to the glamorous.com. So I knew that, but I didn't know that.
there's a lot of
Good.
things actually. Come along to
Oh,
one of my Google presentations because I just cram so much stuff into them. Because the thing is, I don't sell SEO.
okay.
I'm fascinated by Google and I like sharing knowledge about it because I like putting. It's amazing what people could do to help themselves and get better rankings. So yeah, being hosted, accessibility. What I do, you asked about what is the process. Well, usually somebody will come to me, they'll book onto my calendar, Calendly, for a website review. I will review the website. I won't make any comments about whether I think it looks pretty or not because Google's blind, so it doesn't care. Yeah, the review is about a Google point of view. And the problem with Wix and Weebly is that because it's not, you don't have any control over the build. You build this thing, but it's not your code, so you can't adjust the code. And the last Wix website I assessed had 268 accessibility errors on the homepage, and anything over 10 is worrying. 268, and I think and it was a bit of a record actually. But you can't do anything about it. But it's fine because at the end of the day, you haven't paid very much for it. Do you see what I mean? So everything with Google is relative. Yeah, you don't have to be completely perfectly coded or completely accessible or have all of these things in place. You just need to have more than your competitors because everything is relative. Yeah, you're not trying to beat Amazon or the BBC. You're trying to beat other PR companies. Yeah, in your case. Yeah, and you're not trying to beat PR companies necessarily in Scotland. You're trying to beat them where you are, and that's where Google likes you to be where you are. So that's the thing that you can do. Look at where you are. Look at what your competitors are doing, and if you can do more than they're doing and tick more boxes, then you will. It's inevitably you will go above them. It may take a little bit of a time. One of the things about Google, though, is that most of this stuff is stuff that doesn't actually cost very much money. What it does cost is time. And now there's a lot of people with COVID who've got time. And
Exactly. So it's, yeah, so I'm sorry to interrupt. Exactly. So that's the perfect time actually at this time to really sort your website out and learn about your SEO and stuff. So that's really exciting. When do you do these things?
well, I do them. I do a fair bit of networking, do presentations on there. But actually, I've spent the first 3 weeks of the kind of lockdown because obviously all the orders just dropped off completely for weeks. I spent all that time getting my head around video because I did a load of videos about 4 years ago with the brilliant Andy Good of andygood.tv, and that was over at his studio over in Hamburg. Um, Things changed with Google, and I wanted to do a series of updated videos. So I got myself a green screen and some lighting and whatever, and that's what I'm doing. So I've done the scripts for the first few, and I'll be rolling them out over the next few weeks on the channel. So I'll give you the details, and then people can subscribe to that. By the end of it, they'll have the knowledge to be working on the website and getting some results from it. So yeah, and I love doing it because I don't sell SEO. I see so many people spend a fortune on SEO, search engine optimization. They don't know what they're getting. There are some really good companies out there, but there are a lot who just take a lot of money and you don't really see any results. And the thing is, because you don't know what you don't know what is being done. So that's why I say, look, start with your website, find out what's wrong with it. These are the things that need to be done, and then these are the things that you could do ongoing. And then it's up to them. Some people say, well, perhaps we could look at the website. Other people say, well, that's great, and they'll go back to their web designer with the issues that I've highlighted. And whatever. It's fine. I'm not going to get everybody's website. What I do want to do, without sounding cheesy, is actually make the world a bit more accessible. And I want, every time a website is a bit better for somebody who's blind or whatever, that makes me happy, because it's just a matter of fairness and equality. So
that's really powerful. Yeah, because it's a bigger conversation than just websites. Not just, because that depreciates it, which it isn't. Bigger conversation than websites and physical accessibility. To make the world accessible and equal for all is actually, it needs to happen. It's not just a noble cause. It really is time.
it's interesting because now, again, because of COVID, so many more people are working from home, and we're on this Zoom meeting. I hadn't even heard of Zoom up until a few months ago, and barely knew how to use it. So barely know how to use it now. But the thing is, it's all new, and people are just moving so much more into kind of online stuff, and therefore it's becoming even more relevant and even more important. I'm not going to be able to do everybody's website, but if I get the message out there and just raise the awareness, the information to do it is all out there. I'm not sitting on the secret. We just, it is a bit tricky to do. It does take time, and that's why people don't like doing it, because it's not fun. My designer Polly, who just laid all these standards, these are the things we're going to do, and Polly's done it every time. My designer, she doesn't really like doing it. It's not the fun bit, but it's the necessary bit. And that really is what it comes down to. It's just doing it properly.
Exactly. And the way that you come across is just very amenable, very, bloke you can talk to down the pub, kind of boy next door. So you don't actually speak geek, like you are speaking in a very everyday language. So that actually, because likewise, I used to be a website designer in the noughties.
Yeah.
So it's really important now that most people have gone digital, to offer the information, because even I find it completely overwhelming, the SEO, the coding and the rankings and all that. And I go, I don't want to do it. And then I don't do it, which I think most people will do. So to have regular little bite-sized videos to just watch and learn, I think is the way forward. And the fact that we've got to know you now, we've got to know your reason for being, your point of view, and what you're doing, and you're making accessibility more accessible, ironically, to more people. I just think that can only be a good thing, because people now, it's a bigger market. The digital market is now the market. So it's really lovely to, I think, agree with Google here. Never thought I'd say that, but it's a local market. You're a local, I'm a local. I like doing business locally as well, so that when this does eventually lift, I would love to come and meet you. So I think it's really nice to offer these things. And yes, I can go and learn your course, but then I can go networking, and I'd love to meet you too. I like that situation. It just makes it more amenable and more doable and more accessible.
People do business with people at the end of the day, and we've got these standards because Jess put these in place. She hasn't been well for quite some time, unfortunately, but she's still knocking out art. She's still doing stuff, and we're still, because she started the business with me. The accessibility is fundamental, and it always will be, because it is part of our ethos. And she came up with the idea of access by design, because she, as a digital artist, wanted to prove to the world that you can actually be accessible and have strong design. So that's kind of what it's all about, really. Run your own website kind of speaks. It's kind of obvious. Funny thing about that, actually, of our first 100 clients, because you can actually build it yourself. Um, out of the first 100 clients, only 2 people actually did it, and they needed a bit of help. And the thing is, when I did the kind of uh, help manual, I just took a load of screenshots and put it together in a document. That's all you need. There's a few arrows. Click here, do that. That's all you need, surely. Um, and they weren't doing this. So I thought, okay, well, I'm going to make some videos. And I spent 2 weeks. I took ages to do these kind of how-to videos, taking them through every single aspect of doing it. 14 videos I did in the end. Ever since then, the number of people building their own is now probably 2 or 3 out of every 5. Certainly 2 out of every 5, because all the videos are there. And it's one of those moments you think, blimey, if I'd have done that 3 years ago, we'd have rather a lot more clients. I mean, we've got loads of clients, don't get me wrong, but we would, because it just makes it easy. So my next thing is to do some more advanced tutorials on video, and particularly for those who've come on board with our e-commerce product. So a lot of the stuff that I'm doing is very much about lots of video content. Say the ones I did for Run Your Own, they kind of seem to work for people. So yeah. So if somebody who actually wants to do it, they'll save themselves the build fee, because we have a price for the product, price for the hosting, and then price for if we build it for them. If they want to build it themselves, they can.
That's exciting. That's really exciting. So yeah, I'm actually dyslexic, and I can't follow written instruction. I mean, I can, but it's really difficult. And the little diagrams and screenshots and do that. And after about 2 different things, my brain just goes, I can't do it. So, but I'm a visual learner, so I always go to YouTube and see how you do it on YouTube, and then I go, yeah, I can see that, and I can do it. So, I think video is the way to go, and that's really exciting. So, tell me how we can find those tutorial videos, how we can find you, and so on, and also we will link those at the bottom of this. But tell us verbally so that the
Brilliant.
accessibility of the audio can be known.
Perfect. So Access by Design is www.accessbydesign.uk, or just type, and that'll take you to the bespoke site, or Run Your Own website. It's actually Run Your Own website, but if you just type Run Your Own website into Google, you'll see us. You'll see about 5 adverts above us. Those are ones that people pay to have. We're top organically, which I'm pleased about. If you have a look on Run Your Own website, there's a page called How To. There's 14 videos there. There's a portfolio page, so you can see the different options that we've already done. And they start with a single page, which is an option 1. 5-page website is an option 2. A standard website with unlimited pages is an option 4, and then the one with the e-commerce and different versions is an option 5. So all of the stuff is on there. All the prices are on there. It's a great product. It's very kind of out there. People can see what they get. They see what they're buying into. And if they want to crack on, they can even give it a go, and it won't cost them a penny. They can sign up, no obligation, and start building. And then if they want to go ahead and go live, that's when they pay for it. So that's something to think of.
Exciting. Well, I might be stalking your website just after this call. That's really exciting. Well, thank you so much, Clive. That has been really insightful, very touching,
Thanks,
very
Maria.
inspiring, and I just really appreciate the way that you and Jess have really been way showers of hope, really, without sounding corny, but any inspiration, any hope, any living proof of you can do it. If I can do it, you can do it. I just think can only be a good thing. So thank you
Thank
so
you.
much
So
for that.
lovely talking to you, Maria. Brilliant.
Bless you. All right.
Take care.
Thank you. Bye for now.